The internet is full of safe and bonkers takes on car buying, and there are a lot of opinions surrounding first model year cars. After buying one myself, discussing with a few others who have done the same, and looking at the data over the last 6 years, I want to share what I've learned and hopefully prevent you from making the same mistakes that I've made. If you are to remember one thing from this video, it is that every car is different. In one case we'll discuss, it actually made the most sense financially to buy the first year. In others, waiting a year or two could save you from headaches and regrets. So the first topic, and the biggest reason why people tend to advise against purchasing a first model year car, is reliability, or more so quality control. This does have merit. For a vast majority of my car reviews, I include a reliability segment, and part of that involves looking at Consumer Reports or carcomplaints.com, and almost always there is a much larger amount of reported issues in the early model years of a generation. However, the context here matters. Things like severity and actual rate of occurrence can be often exaggerated. For instance, we'll pull out a couple of examples from Toyota. When the third generation Toyota Tacoma dropped, there were countless reports of transmission issues that seemingly made it look like a bad truck, but in reality it was related to the transmission tuning, something that could definitely be annoying, but was largely fixed through a software reprogram. And with the release of the 2022 Tundra, people were initially scared over failing engines. It was due to faulty turbocharger wastegates, something that is expensive and timely to fix, but the actual number of issues was very small. It was actually just due to a bad batch. Most 2022 buyers never ran into that problem. A lot of brands have dealt with similar limited bad batches, and this usually results in a recall or service bulletin, and your warranty is there to help. Again, there's no denying the rate of occurrence is higher with an early production car, but we tend to think of it like being in a room with a possessed doll. It's not a matter of if catastrophe arises, it's when. But in reality, it's more like living in an apartment complex with 3 haunted rooms versus 1 or 2. There is a bigger chance that you'll wake up on the ceiling, but overall, serious demons are still unlikely. So let's go through a few specific examples. Last year, I did a whole deep dive into the common issues with the Mazda 3. I also interviewed Zach Pradle of Shooting Cars, who has driven his first model year example for nearly all of its then 80,000 miles. Did he have a couple minor issues? Yeah, but he didn't experience a vast majority of the common issues. Another example from my own experience, my parents had purchased a 2008 Toyota Sequoia. The Sequoia is known to be reliable, but especially in the first model year, their common issues were cracked manifolds, coolant leaks, control arm issues, but from the time they bought it in 2013 to the time they sold it with 200,000 miles in 2018, they did not have any mechanical issues. In fact, my dad actually purchased a Ford Bronco. He placed his order in 2020, got it delivered to him in late 2021, and in the comment section of all of my Bronco videos, people explain how they've been terrible, but after about 50,000 miles, he's had virtually no issues with 0 warranty work. Myself, I bought a 2023 Toyota GR Corolla. This comes with one of the highest horsepower per liter engines ever. This was the first model year for the GRC, and the only actual issue I've had are some interior rattles. Something that I will say is more prevalent there with like early production models, and it's not something that everyone experiences. We also have this Mazda CX-90 I'm driving. It has 5 recalls to address manufacturer concerns, and due to some unrefined low-speed performance, Mazda has issued an update to the transmission software. Teething issues like these might not be too big of a deal for most people, but you are more likely to encounter them with the first model year. But that's not to say common problems don't matter, because there are other cases where a lot of folks actually experience issues. A great example of this was excessive oil consumption with several brands from around 2005 to 2015. What I'm trying to say is every car, no matter the year or even the brand, can have issues. You'll just be a little more likely to face something if you're one of the first to put your money on the line. So if you're looking for the safest bet on dependability, yeah, I would wait a couple of years. Will it remotely guarantee your experience with a car? No. If you're on the fence, here's what I would recommend. Do some research. Look at, is this powertrain new? If not, what were the common issues? Are they resolved? Same goes with the platform. You'd be surprised how many all-new cars are really just refreshed models or something that's based on a vehicle overseas. And lastly, while I refrain from making blanket brand statements when it comes to reliability of a specific model, looking at manufacturer history can tell you which company might have tested things more thoroughly before putting out a product, something that's important with first model year cars. For instance, I'd be more cautious buying a newly redesigned Chevy Colorado than a Toyota Tacoma. Briefly, I'd like to thank the kind folks over at Royal South Mazda in Bloomington, Indiana for letting me test drive this CX-90 and answering some of my service and reliability questions in the past. If you're in the market, check them out and tell them thanks for me. The next reason why you might refrain from purchasing a first model year car is also a very valid one, and that is price. This can be volatile, but it's not always bad. So let's come back to the Ford Bronco. This was a highly anticipated release. We saw a lot of dealer markup in the early days, but if you did place an order, you could get them for MSRP. Again, as my father had done, and his exact package costed him a cool $53,000. It was the Badlands with the Luxe package and a whole host of different accessories. That car now, for the 2023 model year, carries an MSRP of roughly $4,000 to $5,000 more. And Ford even got rid of the base trim, which meant that the entry price jumped 10 grand. The Bronco Raptor, that MSRP in 2022 was technically $71,000 before the dealer got a hold of you, but for 24, the price is 20 grand higher before markups. So being a first adopter actually made sense for him. Kind of an outlier situation. Most cars do get more expensive every year, but the number is closer to $500, maybe $1,000. I think what we see a lot more of these days are regular cars that are either all new or fresh off of a redesign, and they come with markup. Now, this is something that is especially frustrating depending on your region, because you might literally get a $5,000 better deal on the exact same car if you travel to a different town. Now, to give out specific examples, let's talk the Honda Civic Si. When that first came out, it was basically impossible to get one for MSRP. With a car like that, the value proposition was so pivotal to its success that it kind of soiled the whole point. Just buy an Acura Integra. But even worse was the Type R. Believe it or not, they actually have more Type Rs available, but they still demand a higher price premium because it is a hot car. I have talked with dealers that will sell them for MSRP, but the wait time is absurd. But thankfully, the SI doesn't have that kind of hype, and you can now find one for MSRP. The problem is it took a couple of years for that to happen, and you're gonna see that with some of these low production cars like my own GR Corolla. I still have trouble sleeping sometimes when I think about the $2,000 markup and BS paint protection that was the best deal that I could find. I was calling around for 2 months ever since they first hit dealerships. I really wanted to buy one for the channel, and I wanted to be among the first to do so. I paid a price for that. I would not recommend you do the same. Even more so now, as MSRP is almost the norm in many areas around the US for the Toyota. So if you're facing markup on a first model year, low production car, I'd probably wait unless you're currently out of a car. Maybe $2,000, again, it's not all that much, but it honestly still bothers me. As much as I do really enjoy driving this thing. But I think the even more gross cases come from vehicles like the Toyota Tacoma that just came out. We're gonna see a lot of markups initially, but remember, they're trying to push out 200, 300,000 of these every year. Once inventory is there, dealers aren't really going to have leverage. So instead of waiting a year to maybe get one at MSRP, it'll probably just be a couple of months. Some brands do penalize dealerships for doing this, like Subaru. It's gonna be much harder to find their cars marked up over MSRP, whereas Toyota and especially Honda, it's very common even on more mainstream models. Some other brands have also seen dealerships charging markups and gotten mad, so they told them to stop doing it, and then they marked up the cars themselves from the factory, like Ford. Remember, these are cars that we're talking about, so they depreciate and they're mobile. If it takes you a $400 plane ticket to save you $5,000, I'd do it. Other cars like the Civic Type R, you're probably just going to need patience or extreme luck. And unless it's a car with low production numbers, markup will likely go away pretty quickly. The last thing we should consider is the content. So a lot of times, after the first or second model year, a brand will add some different features or make up a new trim that fills a hole left in the lineup. For instance, with my own GR Corolla, when I was buying it, I really liked the Circuit Edition, but it was expensive and hard to find, but I really wanted the Ultra Suede seats, and I thought the spoiler was cool too. And for 2024, Toyota made the Premium Edition that offered a spoiler and came standard with the Circuit Edition seats for really not a whole lot more money than my car. In fact, after the markup, it would have been cheaper. So being a first adopter in my case, definitely not ideal. And things like that are a pretty widespread trend. So if you can wait a couple of years, there'll probably be a better spec. On the flip side, some brands remove features. We had the Honda Accord in the previous generation that after a couple of years, they dropped the manual transmission. The same thing is happening now with the VW GTI. Fortunately, you'd likely have enough of a heads up to buy the current model before whatever feature you're seeking goes away. The concept of the perfect opportunity is flawed. In most cases, we're not going to know when the best opportunity to buy is presented to us until we have hindsight. Thinking too hard about it will drive you crazy. So here are my final recommendations. Research the powertrain and platform. How new is it really? If it's a high volume vehicle and it has markup, wait or travel unless you don't have any transportation. And are you buying this because it is the exact car that you've been waiting for? Or did you just see the release and think, oh hell yeah? Because if you can wait, there might also be a better version down the road, in addition to increased availability and less quality concerns. The most sensible thing to do is to wait. The market history and reliability data would support that stance. However, it's typically not make or break. It's your money, and as long as you're making an informed decision, there's no shame in picking up the latest and greatest. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like to help me sneak into the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more fun, detailed car content without fluff. Consider becoming a channel member for an additional podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one.